I'm recording my homily for Palm Sunday of 2018, and I guess it's a good sign when I can't record my homily in the church, which is right in front here, because there's people in there, and I can't record my homily in the chapel because there's people praying in there. So those are all good signs, so I'm stuck outside with the cemetery behind me, and lots of road noise, and I got this drain gurgling and it's pouring down rain. But all right, so this morning I was lamenting all the bad weather, and I thought, maybe I really shouldn't do that, because we're getting it because God wants it, so I guess it's a good thing. Okay, so for Palm Sunday, we reenact the triumphal entry of Jesus into Jerusalem. But to any Christian who's really in tune with the scriptures, they understand that this is an anomaly. This is not going to become the norm. In other words, Jesus having this moment of fame. Jesus was not a person to seek fame. He never really desired it. In fact, one could say that the only reason this triumphal entry happened into Jerusalem is because it was to fulfill a prophecy. But you have this moment where all the people desire it. It's like, yes, let's follow Jesus. He's popular. Everyone loves him. Let's be part of it. It's like being part of a winning team. It's being part of someone who's really super famous, who's, as they say, the flavor of the month, whatever. The person who's really on, let's follow them. And so Jesus is that person in this moment. But this is the first time he's ever had this kind of fame in this manner, and it is also going to be the last time. If you look at the world, there's times when, still getting over the cough, there's times in the world when the church was popular, like in the 1950s, and Hollywood still looked upon the church, and our culture looked upon the church as a positive thing, but that was an anomaly. You look at the history of the church, and generally speaking, the church really reflects Jesus Christ, which is, it's not to be famous, it's not to have fame, it's not to be glorified by the world. In fact, it's the opposite. And so just to keep that in mind as we enter into Holy Week, that Holy Week is more a representation of reality for us as Christians. So as we go into the story of Holy Week, I want to use two examples. So at Mass we read the Passion, right? I want to take two people from the Passion and just show how we can, or we should, or we shouldn't perhaps, be living our faith and entering into the passion of Jesus Christ in the world and today. So the first is the woman, right? In the Gospel of Mark, which we read this week on Sunday, she's not named. But there's another gospel where she's named. It's Mary, the sister of Martha. And so they're in Bethany. That's the home of Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Bethany is really close to Jerusalem. Literally, when you're standing on the hilltop of Bethany, you look out and you can see the temple. I mean, it's really close. It's like 2 miles distance. It's not very far. So they're in Bethany. And Jesus is having dinner with them. He's eating with them. And Mary, the woman, comes in with this jar of perfumed oil to anoint him. Now, let's do a little mathematics, all right? This jar of oil that she brings in is said to be worth 300 denarii. 300 denarii. In the English translation, they translate it as 300 days' wages. That's the value. So 1 denarii is worth 1 day's wage. Now, today, what is 1 day's wage? What is the average day's wage? Well, at the masses, I just use the number, since I've already done the math, I just use the number $15 an hour is a typical hourly wage. It's probably below average, but let's say $15 an hour. Now, let's say a person works 8 hours a day, right? $15 an hour, 8 hours a day, comes out to $120 a day. Don't worry about taxes, okay, for this purpose. All right, so $120 a day. Now, in a week, let's say a person works 5 days a week, okay? 5 days a week, what's 5 times 120? 600. So let's say the average person makes $600 a week. Now, multiply that out for the whole year, so that's times 52, and it comes out to about $31,000, in that ballpark, $31,000, okay? Our annual salary. Now, 300 days' wages is about a year's worth of work, okay? That means that jar of perfumed oil that she poured over Jesus is worth, in today's money, about $31,000. Can you imagine that? A jar of perfumed oil worth $30,000? Now, do you own in your house a jar of perfume that's worth $30,000? Probably not. So what are the possibilities? Well, there's two possibilities. One, Mary was incredibly wealthy. But that doesn't really seem to fit at all, does it? There's nothing that would ever allude to the fact that she is that wealthy. What's the other possibility? The other possibility is she gave everything. She gave everything so that she could buy that one jar of perfumed oil. Now, why would a person do that? Well, that's Judas. So the person who ridicules her is not named in the gospel today, but in the other gospel he's named, and that's Judas Iscariot. And he says, "What are you doing? Why would you spend a year's worth of money, $30,000 on a jar of perfumed oil? We could have used it for the poor." Well, he's not really thinking of the poor, right? But it doesn't make any sense to him. And in some ways, we're kind of like Judas in this moment, right? It's like, whoa, $30,000, why? So she takes it. And I think in order to understand why, you have to understand Mary, right? Mary is the one who sat at the feet of Jesus and just absorbed everything. She just took it in. And you have to believe that there's this moment for Mary where there was this incredible and radical transformation in her life, where Jesus Christ changed her life, where Jesus saved her life. And so now she's simply reading the handwriting on the wall. She knows what's about to happen. The thing is, Jesus had prophesied, he had told that his coming death was going to happen. He was going to die and he was going to rise. And the disciples, they're a little slow on the uptake in this moment. They're not quite putting all the pieces together. But Mary, who sat at his feet, she took it in and she believed him. She knows what's happening. And so she then goes, and perhaps maybe she had a nest egg, maybe this was her life savings, whatever it could be. She went and bought this oil so that she could anoint Jesus. It's kind of like remember the parable of the man looking for the finest pearl, right? And he goes and he finds that pearl, and so he goes and sells everything so that he can buy that one pearl. Well, here for Mary, she has that one pearl, not the oil, but Jesus. And so for her to go sell everything, to do an act of love for Jesus, is not that surprising. It makes sense. And so Mary is an example. Mary is an example of listening, taking it in deeply, and then preparing, right? She believed it, and so she prepared for it. And so when all these events start to happen, Mary's not in shock. Mary's not running away. Mary's not denying Jesus 3 times. She is acting. She's not stopping it. She's not changing it. She's simply acting. She's going with the events that are happening. Powerful example of faith. There's a beautiful line in the gospel. I could probably look it up, but let me paraphrase, where it says, Jesus says to Judas, but to the others, says, don't pick on her. Don't stop what she's doing. You'll always have the poor with you, but you're not always going to have me. And then he says, and in the gospel, it's going to be written so that people for all ages are going to remember what she has done for me. How often does he, oh man, the rain is moving. How often does he say that? How often does he say that of people? That people for all ages are going to remember this act of love. So there's something here that Jesus definitely wants you and me to never ever forget. This encounter with Mary and what she does. She doesn't go and buy a bottle of perfumed oil that's worth $30 or $100. $30,000. In other words, I think symbolically she was not afraid to give of everything in this moment, to have an act, not of sentimentality, but an act of love. All right, so we're going to use her as an example, but we're going to go to Peter now. So Peter is the other person who the gospel follows through the course of these events, and he's very different in this moment. Now, Peter's not a bad guy. I love Peter. He's going to get on board. He's going to do fantastic, okay? But in today's reading, in today's gospel reading of the Passion, he's not getting it. When Jesus tells him to pray, right? Watch and pray. When they're in the garden after the Last Supper, what does Peter do? He falls asleep. And so you already have the difference between Mary and him. Mary sits at the feet of Jesus and listens attentively. And you can think example of that also is just her, she would have been very contemplative in her prayer, and every day would have been a day to grow closer in her prayer to God. Peter falls asleep. Jesus begs Peter, right? How many times did he ask him to stay awake? I forgot. How many times was it 3 times? I think it was 3 times he asked him to stay awake. And Peter keeps falling back asleep. So he's not spiritually really in tune with Jesus in this moment. So something needs to be purified. And then afterwards, he goes and fulfills the prophecy that Jesus had just told him about, that he was going to deny him. Okay? Peter is the opposite example of Mary. He's not ready to give it all. He said he would die for him, but he's not ready. He's not ready. Now, I think many of us can relate to Peter in this, okay? I used an example in my homily, so of the shooting in Florida, in the school. You've read the articles about the security guard. The security guard, who's not just a minimum wage security guard. He was a sheriff's deputy. He was armed. He was trained. He was a person who for all practical reasons could have been able to stop what had happened. But they've showed the video footage where he doesn't go in. He waits outside. And so while this person is killing kids inside the school, he's waiting outside. And a lot of people have given their opinions on that. And I would say there's 3 possibilities of what had happened for him. The first is he was trained to wait. Now, I'm not sure that's the case. I think that was the case many years ago. They were trained to wait for backup. But I think that training has changed. So whether or not that's a possibility, I don't know for sure. That he was just following his training. The second possibility is he just simply froze. He was in this moment. He just wasn't ready psychologically, emotionally. He wasn't ready. And so when it all started to happen, he just completely froze up. Have you ever had a moment where you're driving down the freeway and you're just kind of in the zone, you're just driving, and then all of a sudden an accident happens right in front of you, and it takes a while for the brain to trigger that this is happening, and so you don't even hit the brakes, you don't do anything, because it's like the brain can't comprehend. The brain is trying to figure it out, but it takes a second, and so you just kind of freeze up. Is it possible that happened for him, that he just froze up? He's like, he didn't know what to do. I think that's possible. That is possible. So that's kind of like Peter. Peter didn't betray him in the sense of Judas, but he froze up. And he didn't he didn't make the right decision. He wasn't ready to make the right decision. I wonder if somebody had gone to that security guard the day before and said, look, tomorrow somebody's going to come into that school with a gun, and you're going to be the only one who can stop him. I wonder if his actions and his behavior would have been very different. And so Mary is kind of like that. Mary's like that person. She's so in tune with Jesus, she believes his word, she knows what's happening, and so she acts. So that's the fruit of somebody who's very prayerful. Many times when I ask people in confession if they pray every day, well, they'll say, well, I talk to Jesus every day, as I'm doing things. And I say, yeah, okay, that's great, wonderful. But do you have time with him where you just sit at his feet? You're not doing anything. You just sit at his feet every single day. Because I believe people who are really in tune with Jesus, then when they have things happen in their life, they can act because they know what God expects of them. They know what God wants because they know what God is doing. Peter didn't know. Peter was still clinging to what he wanted, right? Remember how he challenged Jesus and he said, Jesus, no, you're not going to die. Let's end with this dying stuff. That was his will, my will be done, but that's not God's plan. And so when God's plan starts to unravel, he freezes. He freezes up. So a person goes to the doctor, and the doctor tells them that they have advanced stage cancer, and the person turns on God, and he gets mad at God, and he says, why me? Why me? That's Peter. But a person who's very prayerful and in tune with God has something like that happen, has the passion happen in their life. God puts a big cross on their shoulder, and they see it as God is acting. And so they're more like Mary. Now, this security guard in Florida, there's a third possibility. And the third possibility was simply that he was a coward. He made the decision. He was rationally processing it. And he decided that he was not going to die that day. And that the kids may die, but he was not going to die that day. And so he just didn't go in. Now, I hope that's not the case. If it is the case, just remind ourselves God is merciful. God can forgive even our most grievous sins. But if that was the case, then that's like Judas. It's just a complete betrayal. It's just turning one's back completely and choosing to do it. Now, being prepared. So being prepared means preparing every day. It means not waiting to the last minute and not saying, well, when it happens, it happens. No, it means being able to really every day stay close to God, stay very close to him, so that in the midst of whatever's happening can respond like Mary. We live in a culture today where we're not going to be honored as Catholics, we're not going to be glorified, we're not going to become famous because we're Catholics. We simply need to walk through the Passion, because right now we're in the Passion. Being a Catholic, being a good Catholic, is being in the Passion today. People are they're going to spit, maybe not spit on you literally, but they'll spit on you figuratively. They'll laugh at you. If you wear your faith on your sleeve, if you wear it outside, if you do anything abnormal, if you do anything that's not part of the routine, people they'll look down on you, right? But somebody who's close to Jesus Christ will do exactly what he wants them to do. Now, I also say this, I think when I was younger, and I think, okay, when's the first time I was really put to the test, when I was really tempted to commit a very, very serious sin in my life, like really betray the moral teachings of the church? And it's probably when I was 16, 17, 18, somewhere in there, where the temptation really was presented as to do something really bad morally. I think today, for Catholics, for kids, I think the choice actually hits them when they're about 11 or 12 years old. Because if kids have open access to the internet, they are being exposed to everything. Now, parents like to believe that their kids don't do anything that they wouldn't do, but when kids get on the internet, they're curious. When young men, young women, when they start going through puberty and they start recognizing their own sexual feelings, and the internet will open them up to anything, 12 years old, 13 years old, they're making really big decisions about themselves and about adult type of things. I think shooting in our schools is kind of an example of that. It's almost like they're being forced to make adult decisions before they're ready. And then when they screw it up, when life it throws all kinds of bad things at them, they can't handle it. And so they become more like Peter, or in some cases more like Judas. And so we need to prepare our kids. Parents really, really need to teach their children how to be close to God. How to be close to God in their mind, their body, their spirit. How to be really close to Him. How to be like Mary. How to sit at the feet of Jesus. And so if parents aren't doing it, kids aren't going to do it. And so being able to do that, how to sit at the feet of Jesus. And so that way the kids will also grow up prepared. So when the cross comes, when life throws bad things at them, they're not just like sheep being thrown out there as food for the wolves. But they can defend themselves. They can act accordingly like Mary. And, not to beat up on Peter, but we can also get it right the way Peter will get it right, as we'll see in the next couple weeks. All right. God bless you. I hope you have a wonderful Holy Week, and I'll see you at Easter.